I think Pierce Brosnan was Bond when the first time I kind of came into it. And I know this is incredibly nerdy, but I kind of grew up playing video games, so GoldenEye was the big game, and that kind of brought me to the films. And yeah, I mean, just that sound is so different from anything else that anybody really does in film, especially nowadays. And even when we were recording cues with the brass yesterday, it's like the second you hear those kind of
Yeah.
sounds, you instantly know it's a Bond film.
First off, how it happened was Hans called me and he said, "Right, James Bond, do you fancy doing it?" So I said, well, "What took you? What took you so long?" And because to me, I associate it with the guitar. I now since know from working with Steve that, believe it or not, that brass. I wasn't quite as aware of just what a big part of the soundscape that the brass was, but so I was like, well, I'm thinking, well, it's a guitar featured thing, so I was obviously very flattered, felt very privileged to do it and honoured. I thought, well, yeah, I can do that with a certain sound. What's you have to pay tribute and be appropriate to the original thing, but without pastiching it too much. As a musician, it's been great. I mean, it's a dream job as a guitar player, and as a British guitar player, I think it's a dream job, and and it's a real honour. But just as a musician, anyway, I always really love working with Steve and Hans because I get to find out stuff that I wouldn't normally find out. I remember there was a certain point when Hans came in and said to me that I was paying slightly too much respect to the chord changes he'd written, and he wanted me to be free to, which was a very generous thing and very helpful, because he wanted me to be a bit more be myself a little more. And if maybe I can answer the question for these guys, I think that's what happened with both Hans and Steve, in that they were very respectful to what James Bond is historically and the legacy and all of that, and the other thing, which is a real skill about being appropriate to the film, that first and foremost, but at the same time being themselves as well. You have to be you can't be so respectful that you can't have your own voice.
It's a constantly evolving process, and actually the constantly evolving process is to look at the character and go, oh, hang on a second, he's moving a bit like this, it's lit differently, this is, oh, look at this, the DP is doing something really interesting with the light, so that calls for certain colours in the orchestra, or that calls for certain bits of electronica, or whatever it is, it's and then, of course, we push it until somebody tells us to stop.
For me, coming to it from outside, from rock music almost, there's bits that simply sometimes you expect something to be really loud, and you've discovered that it's much more effective when it's really quiet. And silences and things like that, these are all things that I'm starting to notice more and more the more I've worked on these films. And it's just not doing the obvious.
There's a sensitivity, there's a grown-up sensitivity to this film, which I think is really good. And the film starts off from sort of a place of tragedy, and it doesn't start off with a fun chase. It starts in a much darker place, and give me dark, I'm happy, it inspires. I just can't say it enough and often enough that Michael and Barbara are just, we feel so safe and so supported because they really know what they're doing. It's very rare that you get producers who are that familiar with. Very rare. It's impossible. There is nobody else in this world who has lived the material in one way or the other the way they have. And so, you don't even need to ask the question. You just need to look over your shoulder and see how they're reacting to a certain bit to know if you're on the right track or if you need to go and steer it a bit in a certain direction.
But a couple of times when in meetings and when we've been going through bits of music, and Daniel Craig's name's come up about how he feel about the music. It's become quite evident early on just how much he cares about
Yes.
the work, and in my limited experience, that's I'm sure all actors do, but leading actors do, but. It's evident to everybody on the team that he really is into every aspect of it, and the music's very, very important, and he's super invested in that side of it, and that's kind of helped the atmosphere, I think, and it's added a sort of just another dimension to it, I think.
You just look at what's on screen, and you get so much from the actors on screen that it kind of, in a funny way, with all the material that's been written in all the past films, it ends up slightly writing itself, and then you tinker with it until you've broken it a little bit and made it kind of your own, before it becomes something new and something exciting, but still feels like it's in that world.
The job of certainly the guitar in the music is often, certainly when there's action, no doubt about that. When Bond is about to go into Bond mode, whether it's a car chase or heroic, I think.
Yeah.
I have that association. Like when he's about to be heroic, suddenly you hear the guitar, which is great. I can do that, but this will be fun. But there's also intrigue as well, I think, which was one of the things that is come from the old John Barry legacy.
For me, it was really easy because I went, if there is one genre of movies that Johnny Marr was born for to play, it's this one. I said, just be yourself.
Yeah, it's been very lucky. I mean, the other thing as well, getting too corny about it, everyone's friends, everyone's working at a high level of ambition, and a lot's expected of everybody.
Hang on,
what I see
sidebar.
though is that everybody kind of mates.
One of the first things was being given this file of a Billie Eilish song that she and her brother Phineas had done, and it was just a demo, and instantly going, I don't want to hear anything else. This is it. And there was a bit of, but there are all these other people who've written, songs, and I said, I don't want to hear anything else. This feels like the story to me, even though they don't know the story. This feels like the story to me, and it feels relevant, and it feels like a young person with an amazingly old heart at the same time. So it traveled across time for me. This place, George Martin, we're at Air Studios. George Martin gave me my very first paying job. I've done 100-something movies maybe here. This is so home from home that I was actually here when they were constructing it, so I can tell you what's in the walls. And it feels really important that what we do, this thing, where we mix electronics, where we mix rock and roll, where we mix orchestra, where we live by the edicts that Duke Ellington gave all of us. There are only two types of music, good music and bad music, and that we keep orchestras alive and we keep places like this going, and a movie like this lets you do this. I mean, right now you have probably the world's most extraordinary brass players sitting down there, making a racket. It's pretty extraordinary. The images and the sound are one, and they create an experience that you haven't had before, and that we, the music, are like opening doors and inviting you in to have an experience and to feel something. We're not going to tell you what it is, and we're not going to tell you what to feel, but just to have the possibility of having an experience. I think that's pretty cool.